Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. Join me as we have a real-life discussion on how to change your life by changing your thoughts. Remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. Hi, and welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. My name is Sloan Fremont, and I'm your host. This week, we're going to be talking about developing Moxie. Moxie, M-O-X-I-E. What a great word, right? For some reason, that word reminds me of something from the 1970s with those white go-go boots. I don't know. Maybe that word was used in Austin Powers, the movie, and maybe that's what I'm thinking. But that word Moxie to me is such a good word. And so what is it, right? What is Moxie? It can be described as really, your guts or your attitude, right? Like your force of character or determination or someone with nerve, right? Like if you have Moxie, you're not going to let a minor setback stop you from trying again, right? Because you're determined and you don't give up easily. And Moxie could also be described as someone with maybe staying power, right? Or someone with a fighting spirit. So I wanted to talk about that this week because I think it's, there's so much going on as usual every week. I feel like I say that every week, but there's so much going on. And what we're going to talk about today, I think will really help you navigate that. So Moxie, okay, we've talked about what it is. So why should you develop it? Okay, so remember, everything I talk about in this show is my opinion. It's my truth. It's how I see the world. And nothing about this show is ever telling you that you should believe this way, right? This is just me presenting you with information as I see it and as I believe it. And as I've said for so long, pretty much I think from the inception of the show, to take what works for you and leave the rest. And I genuinely mean that, right? I genuinely mean that. So I'm going to talk about some things today that may be new to you. And if this sounds weird or odd, or you're like, what is she talking about? I would suggest you look into it further and find out for yourself, right? Find your own truth about this. So with that being said, let me dig into this a little bit further about why I think we all should develop Moxie. So right now we're living in this epic psyop, right? Where propaganda and lies abound. And in order to keep our sanity and get through this, we have to be able to look past what we're seeing and understand how to really navigate through what's going on. If you're not familiar with what a PSYOP is, it stands for psychological operation, and it's used by military and governments throughout the world, and I would say in this day and age by the corporate media as well, to influence the perceptions, the attitudes, the beliefs, like the general image or the general outlook of the general public. And this is not always on such a grand scale that we're seeing right now, right? You may see this in other countries by dictatorships or within communist regimes, right? If you look back in history, there are many, many examples of this being used throughout the world. So if this is a new concept for you, I really highly suggest you research this on your own and form your own opinions about this. But, with what we're seeing right now, with all of the information being presented, and as I look at and I see things, and I'm sometimes I don't even have words for it because I can't believe it's actually happening. But I've talked about this before with the corporate media. My thoughts on the information they present. To me, it's propaganda, 100% without a doubt. I think very little of what mainstream reports tell us is true. Honestly, that's my opinion on it. And it always makes me think about, I see these memes or, quotes or whatever, and they talk about in communist countries, right? Like North Korea or China or something that, they're forced to listen to propaganda in those countries, right? But at least they know it's propaganda. And here in America, people willingly listen to it and they take it for truth, right? We think because we live in a quote free country that we're being presented with the best information that is for our best interest. And after this year, I really have to question that. I mean, I always questioned it before, but I'm sorry, after this year, I really, really question it. So again, if this concept of a psychological operation is new for you, I highly encourage you to look into it further this week. And again, decide for yourself. You may think or decide after this that I'm full of shit, and that's fine. But come to your own conclusion about it. So there are many things happening, right? Like I said right now. And things we can't see, right? These ups and downs and sideways and backwards and forwards. And, these are all part of the process, I think, for this Great Awakening. And during all this, we really need to guard our attitude, right? We need to guard our mental stability. We need to guard our, what we take in and what we consume and what we react to. Because really, in reality, on all of this, right, we're working on partial information. Some of it's true, like I said, some of it's not. The majority, I personally believe, is not. And there's a lot of flat-out lies going on. And, the struggle, I think, for most of us is we never know enough to know anything for sure, right? That's why this is also so earth-shattering and jarring for most of us, right? Because we never know enough to know anything for sure. And these headlines that we see, right, it's almost like we're living by the hour, right? Like, what's next? And, I think I've said this before about how the corporate media, what they love to do is present information but never really present the solution to the information, right? And that's what keeps us coming back for more, right? We're looking for that answer. We're looking for that relief. We're looking for that, okay, I can relax now because of this. And that really doesn't ever happen, right? It just keeps us coming back. They keep us coming back for more. And so this idea, this concept, this alternative way to look at things of developing Moxie, it really helps us, I think, and it's at least helped me navigate all of this. And it gives us that staying power in not letting those minor setbacks or those quote breaking news alerts, right, that can make your heart drop, right? It helps us navigate through all that because, and let's be honest, everybody has a freaking breaking news with the siren emojis on it every 5 minutes, right? So then we become like numb to that because it's like not everything is breaking news, right? But I mean, right now, I don't know, maybe it is. But anyway, all right. So I wanted to get into some ways to develop Moxie, right? Ways we can actually do this, develop the staying power right now, right today, right in this red hot minute, right? With what's going on, as crazy as it is around you and all of us, how we can do this. So I have 3 points here, 3 thoughts to think about this week as you think about developing Moxie in your own life. All right, so the first one is decide which rabbit hole is worth chasing. This is something I've learned myself this year, is I've been down rabbit holes left and right, up and down, back and forth about things that in the end left me exhausted. They left me feeling hopeless. They left me feeling full of despair and that everything is just futile. And so what's the point, right? And so chasing every rabbit hole is not worth our time. It's not mentally healthy. It's also not, it's not going to, it often doesn't take us anywhere good, right? We can find things that resonate with us. We can chase those rabbit holes, right? We can take in that information. Like I said, exactly what I do every week on this show is I provide you with information. But still, even if you're starting to look at things, question everything, right? I say that, question everything, trust yourself, find your truth on this show, because I highly believe, that is my true, to my core belief in being. That is what I live. That is what I preach because I believe in it. And so I think taking something that resonates with you and following that trail, but still questioning everything, right? Doing your own research and trusting yourself that you can find your own truth in all of this. Because again, chasing rabbit holes will give you information, but it's not always good information, and it doesn't mean it's always true, right? It doesn't mean it isn't true either, but chasing, again, like I said, what I ended up doing this year was chasing these rabbit holes that just left me, they were of no value, right? They just left me feeling hopeless and full of despair. So chase the rabbit hole that gets you closer to the light, not the one that leads you into darkness. That's point number 1. Point number 2, be willing to change your mind on what you thought you knew. So there's a person I follow called Martin Geddes, Geddes, and he wrote a paper called, which is actually a consolidation of his articles. It's called Open Your Mind to Change, a Guidebook to the Great Awakening. And I'll link to that in the show notes. But in that collection of articles that he posted in that book, he talks about the allegory of the cave or Plato's cave. And what this is about is it's presented by the Greek philosopher Plato, and it's written as dialogue between Plato's brother and his mentor Socrates. And so in this little mini story, Socrates describes a group of people who have lived chained to the wall of a cave all of their lives, and they're facing this blank wall. And so the people watch the shadows projected on the wall as they form like these objects passing in front of the fire, and they give names to these shadows, right? This is all they see. So this is what they believe to be true, right? The shadows are the prisoner's reality, but they're not an accurate representation of the real world, right? And so in this story, they explain how one of the prisoners is freed from the cave, and he comes to the understanding, wow, the shadows on the cave wall are not reality at all, right? And he goes out and he experiences the real world, right? And he comes back and he tries to explain to these other prisoners in the cave that, hey, look, right, there's a whole world outside of what you can see right now, right? Don't take this as truth, right? There's so much outside that this isn't representing. And these other inmates, they won't believe him, right? They don't even desire to leave their prison because they don't know a better life, right? That's all they know. And so him trying this prisoner who escaped, trying to explain this to them just falls on deaf ears, right? They won't have any of it. And I think we see a lot of that right now, right? Because there's things that we've believed, or there's things that we've been taught, or there's these foundational things that we thought we knew that we're seeing being like completely dismantled this year, right? Broken apart. It's making us question like so many things. And so I think being willing to change your mind on what you thought you knew, that is huge. That's a huge, huge piece of this developing this steadiness within ourselves, or developing this staying power, or this willingness to, not give up, because it allows us to see that there's things we didn't know. And I did things because this is what I knew at a certain time, but now I know differently and I can act differently. And that is okay, right? I for some reason as humans, we feel like that changing our mind about something is a bad thing, and it isn't. It isn't. We are allowed new perspectives. We're allowed new ways to look at things. We're allowed, to change our mind. And that's okay, right? There's nothing wrong with that. So being willing to change your mind on what you thought you knew. That's point number 2. And point number 3, be willing to look beyond what you see at face value. This kind of ties into the point number 2 of being willing to change your mind. But I wanted to talk about this as a separate point because, not everything we see is as it seems, right? We see things, but we don't have the 10,000-foot view, right? We're often so far zoomed in, and this goes for anything, right? This can be personal life, like a relationship, something that's going on in your own life, or this can be applied to what we're seeing in the world, right? In our whole world right now. But other possibilities exist, right? And we often get so sucked into what we think is true. Like we know this to be factual, right? Or that it's got to be this way, right? And I think being willing to look beyond what we see and not take everything at face value, right? Not take it as 100% truth, and start to look behind the curtain and see where the information is coming from, right? Like in The Wizard of Oz, right? Look behind the curtain and see who's actually pulling the strings, right? What's the path that we can look at and follow to see what's being told to us, and start to connect the dots behind the scenes. See what the agendas are. See what the intention is. See if if it resonates with you, right? If it actually makes sense. And, things, you might find that things just aren't always as they're presented. And I think learning how to explore this, and even being willing to explore it is a huge part of developing Moxie and developing that trait within ourselves to to question things and be okay with that, right? Be okay with questioning things. And, I want to say that I do talk about the corporate media on here a lot. And obviously, as you know, I am not a fan. And I tend to look more at the alternative. I'm using air quotes for alternative media. But if something is censored or banned or somebody has been, deplatformed, that's generally where I'm going to go look for my information. That's me, because that tells me somebody is trying to silence them, and I want to know why. Why are you trying to silence whoever it is? Why are you, what message do they have? And I want to know that. And so that's often where I get my information. However, that doesn't mean everybody in alternative media is correct either, right? I think as this space emerges, people mean well in this space, I think. But they just aren't always well informed. And that's because none of us have the crystal ball. None of us have the truth. Honestly, we know maybe 1% of what's actually going on. And, but everybody wants to be the one to break the news. And that's fine. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that. We just need to learn to decipher, the rabbit holes that sometimes we get drugged down, and decipher truth from the fear tactics that are being spread, right? Fear gets clicks. Fear gets momentum much easier often than going towards the light. So being willing to look behind the curtain, being willing to look beyond what you see and not just take everything at face value, I think is another key to this whole idea of really embodying someone who lives from an energetic place and just embodies that Moxie, right? That Moxie, that staying power, that hey, not necessarily invincible, but I'm not giving up, right? Just because you tell me this or you tell me that, I'm not giving up. And so I think that's another key. So I asked at the beginning of the show, really, what is Moxie and why should you develop it if you choose? And so Moxie really is, it's that attitude that we have. It's someone who has guts. It's someone who's not going to let a setback or something didn't go their way. They're not just going to give up on it, right? And so why should you develop it, especially now? Like, why is that something you should look at or focus on? And I think because it helps you to manage your reality. Having staying power, it keeps you centered. It keeps you focused on what it is you want to see. It's like you have blinders on to all the other bullshit, right? Like you're focused on what it is that you want, how you want it to go for you. And it keeps us from running off on these various rabbit holes and getting lost in the darkness, which is so easy to do. And I think we should all develop it, because having this skill set of being able to keep going, even when things look like they're not working at all, right? Like one of my phrases I know when I know I'm really getting sucked down to the rabbit hole is when I tell myself, I just can't possibly see how this can work out, right? And often when I say that to myself, I just want to lay in a ball in bed and just die. Like that's how I feel. I just want to curl up and I can't take it anymore. But if we focus on developing the skill set of being able to keep going even when things look like they're absolutely not working, it gets us out of that darkness, right? It helps us cross the finish line of what it is that we want, right? The goal that we want to achieve or whatever it is. And it shows your own self. It shows our own selves, which we often, have to do, like work harder at than we do with anybody else, but it shows that we're capable and we can do the things that we want to do, right? We can achieve what we want in our life. We're not just relegated to these victims where we have to just suffer, right? Our obsession with wanting to suffer has to stop, right? I think that's it just has to. And but we're often the one, like I said, we have to work harder at convincing ourselves, and we're often our biggest enemy. And being able to stop that, right? Stop doing that to ourselves and stop fooling ourselves, because it's a lie, right? It's a lie. We get to have what we want in this life. I don't care what it looks like right now. We get to have what we want. That rule or that universal law of creating our own reality as we want it to be, that doesn't change no matter what's going on. So ultimately, you and I, we're the ones that get to decide what enters our world. We are the ones that get to decide how we view the world. We're the ones that get to decide how this life goes. And you get to decide if you have Moxie or not. And you get to decide if you want to let a minor setback stop you from trying. You get to decide if you choose to be a determined person who doesn't give up. And you get to decide if you're someone with that fighting spirit, right? With that staying power who keeps going even when it looks like nothing is happening. So you get to decide. And that's the key. All right, so that is it this week for our topic of developing Moxie. I hope this left you feeling inspired, feeling, changing your perspective, giving you something, being able to walk away from this and think about things a little differently. That was my intention with this. So, all right, so before I close out, just a couple of reminders. I did start something new on my BitChute channel recently called Reality Management. This is where I do little quick 5 or so minute segments of just thoughts I have throughout the week that don't always make it in the podcast. So my BitChute channel is linked in the show notes below, so I hope you'll check that out. I also have all the shows on there if you prefer visual. I've had some fun creating video edits of the show, so I also have those on there. And I also put it on my Rumble channel too. So I'm on both BitChute and Rumble for videos. And let's see. There was something else I wanted to tell you guys, but I can't remember it right now. I don't know. I'll do it in a reality management video later this week. So, all right. So that's it for this week on developing Moxie. If you'd like to reach out to me, if you'd like to contact me, I have linked all my social media accounts in the show notes. I'm on Parler, Mayway, Gab. As I mentioned, BitChute, Rumble. I also have a Telegram channel, and my Telegram channel has a free personal awakening map that I created for you. That's pinned at the top, so join the channel and get that. And lastly, don't forget, I have my course, 33 Days of Magic, available for you. This really, it's a daily intentional process for you. It really helps you decide how you want your life to go. It's very effective. I highly recommend it. Use it in my own life to get great results. You can find out more at 33daysofmagic.com. All right, so that's it. Remember, before I close out, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth.